This is episode 20 of the A Free Spirit Life podcast. Hi, my friends. It's Shannon, holistic life and spiritual coach and creator of AFreeSpiritLife.com. Thank you so much for being here today. We are talking about boundaries and how to say no without the guilt. So I have amazing women that I get to connect with every day through my Live Freely Circle and through my holistic life coaching. And a common theme that many women struggle with, and I used to be one of them, is this feeling that when we say no to something, we are in some way being selfish, we are putting someone out, we are not being the giving, people-pleasing person that we're used to. And so we continue to say yes because it's our nature to please others. It's our nature to want to help. But we know that people-pleasing gets us into trouble. And what happens is we end up feeling resentful for even saying yes in the first place. We end up feeling overtaxed and overwhelmed by how much we've said yes to. And we get tired of the constant requests. So today is for all of you who feel bad when you have to say no to something. Who feel like you say yes way too often, and people turn to you because they know you're going to say yes. Setting boundaries is difficult if you're not used to it. Once you've done it, you start to realize how easy it becomes because people in your life, they start to really get clear about what you're going to say yes to, what you're available for, and they start to respect that. I saw a quote right before recording the show, and I thought it's perfect. I don't know who says it, but it says, "A lack of boundaries invites a lack of respect." And so think about that in your life. If you like to please people, but you hate conflict, you hate having to say no, you feel like this physical sensation when you have to say no to something, you are not alone in that. But remember, the more you say yes, the more you take on and the less boundaries you have in your life, that also equals the lack of respect from the people in your life because they just are going to assume that you are going to say yes. And going back to the women I've been coaching, so many of them feel like they're taken advantage of. They are good and kind and caring and generous with their time, with their money, with their resources. But sometimes with lack of boundaries, we start to draw in the people who don't really care about the respect piece. They just want things taken care for them, right? They want help. And so they're going to find it any way they can get it. And so it's really important that you learn how to set boundaries in your life as a self-protection tool so that you can actually start cultivating healthier relationships. So in today's show, if you feel like you say yes to everything, or you feel like you really avoid saying no, you just hate it, or maybe you tend to find yourself in situations where you've said yes, and then you have that pit in your stomach, you're like, oh my God, I just said yes to this party, and I don't want to go, and it's coming up, and why did I ever say yes to this? Or I say yes to the, neighborhood volunteering or the PTA, and now I'm in charge of their big fundraiser. And what was I thinking? And you just feel resentful. You feel stressed out. All those things. This show is for you today. Okay. And before I get right into that, I wanted to let you know I am working behind the scenes right now on some new e-courses that I will be offering through my Live Freely Circle. Registration is not open yet. I have a lot of really exciting news coming up. And so I just wanted to get you excited about that. If you are not on my mailing list, make sure to go to AFreeSpiritLife.com and you'll see a window pop up there. If you enter your email address, you will get added to my mailing list. You'll also get my free copy of Making peace inside your day. It's a self-care checklist that you can print off and use each day. And it just kind of helps you set an intention for the day so that you're nourishing your mind, your body, your spirit throughout the day. But you'll get on my mailing list and you will be the first to learn about all the exciting details to come about my new e-course and my new Live Freely Circle. Here are a few testimonials that I have received about the circle recently. This is from Jessica. She says, "You are opening something in me that I didn't know I needed. I tried fixing it other ways with more sleep, more complaining and venting. The circle is what's working. Your courses reached me through inspiration and reflection, addressing vital needs that I had ignored for so long and didn't realize were the root of my struggles. I'm so excited about my life right now." And Sarah says, "You know when you are walking in a straight line with no particular destination and then you hit an intersection? That is when I found Shannon's Free Spirit community and then her Live Freely Circle. Being part of the circle has helped me from going on that endless path to a wonderful, welcoming, and incredibly supportive place. Through her guidance, assignments, and interaction with the other Freelies in the circle, my future has more direction. Having clearing clutter as part of our first task speaks to me loudly, and I'm so excited to see what each month brings to our circle." So more details about my new circle, because we're kind of evolving it this fall, and I will have those details for you to share soon. But like I said, just join the mailing list to be the first to hear about it. Okay, so what in the world are we going to do when our plate is so full and we have said yes to too many things? You know, I remember a time when someone would ask me to do something or invite me to go somewhere or whatever it was. And I usually said yes. And then I would fret over it afterwards, like, oh my God, why did I do that? And I'd kind of beat myself up over it. I'd feel sick about it as the days would near to whatever that request was. Sometimes I would say yes to things that I didn't have time for. And so, of course, I got frustrated and I'd start getting mad at the person that even asked me to help them. Another way that I didn't have very good boundaries is being a sensitive person. A lot of times I take people's energy on. So if I'm in a really great mood and then I am around someone who's in a really crappy mood, I can easily take that on. And so I've gotten way, way better. I have no problem saying no anymore. And a big part of it, I think, too, is when you become a mom or your plate just gets too full. A lot of times you just are forced to say no. But now I've gotten much better at being intentional and being very clear about what I will say yes to and what I just can't. So I know that our weekends are pretty sacred. I know that we have really busy weeks, especially during the school year. So I'm pretty clear about saying no to most things when weekends come. Now, there are times when we get invited to something and it sounds really fun or it's, some family gathering, then for sure, we probably will say yes to that. But there are so many requests of us, whether it's through the school, through the neighborhood, through our friends, through other family, that it just has become very easy for me to protect the little time and space that I have so that I can rest, so that I can breathe, so that we can be spontaneous, so that we can relax. But like I said, one of the boundaries probably most recently that I've had to really learn how to not take on and how to protect is when other people need help. And I feel like I can help them in some way. And, creating a boundary is to say that you are not responsible for fixing the needs of others. You are not responsible for anticipating the needs of others either. And so think about in your own life, whether it's your children, maybe it's your partner, maybe it's your coworkers, maybe it's some neighbors or some good friends or your parents, your grandparents, whatever the case is. Who in your life asks a lot of you. Who do you have a hard time saying no to? Who has that kind of energy that kind of just sucks away your energy when you're around them? All of those things need boundaries. And sometimes it takes a lot of fumbling and stumbling to get a clear indication of what those boundaries should be. So one way to get a clear understanding is to start to recognize why you say yes. Do you struggle with the fear of what others will think of you? Do you constantly worry about if you say no to something, or if you uncommit to something you've already said no to, what others are going to think of you? Or maybe that you have this assumption that if you do say no, someone's going to be mad at you and you don't like that feeling. Maybe you're the kind of person who just hates conflict. And so you say yes no matter what, simply to avoid the conflict. Maybe you say yes because you feel like you're selfish if you say no. Maybe you say yes because you just like to be a carefree, kind of go with the flow, generous kind of person. But at what cost? What is this costing you without the boundaries? So when I think about the women I'm coaching lately, what it's costing them their health, it's costing them their happiness, it's costing them their joy, it's costing them deep and rich, meaningful relationships. Instead, they are overcommitted to draining relationships. A lot of times people who take advantage of their generosity. So there is no liberation in that. And so one thing you can remember is if you are feeling a little nervous about saying no to something, but you know that it's time to set some new boundaries, remember that having boundaries actually creates more freedom. It really does. It's liberating to know what your boundaries are. Think of it. If you feel like you're a fixer and you feel like you're responsible for other people's problems, what if I were to tell you you're not? What if I were to tell you, you know what? You can hand those problems back to that person. Their problems are not your problems. Now, doesn't that seem a little liberating? Isn't there freedom in that? Can you just for a moment close your eyes, look at your own life and think about what you're responsible for? Yes, if you're a parent, you definitely, have your kids' needs, but still, they are responsible for probably way more than even you allow them to be. So just look at that in your life. Whose problems are you trying to fix? Who turns to you to fix all the problems? Whose problems can you hand back? That's the freeing part, and that is what creating boundaries is all about. So if you get past the idea that you're a selfish person for saying no, now you can say, wow, okay, how do I say no? Because here's the thing. When you say yes to something, the nature of saying yes to something is saying no to something else. And 9 times out of 10, when you say yes to a request, to another volunteer opportunity, to another thing on your plate, you're actually most likely saying no to yourself. Because we're already overtaxed. I haven't met someone yet who tells me that they're never busy, that they're not stressed out, they don't have anything to do. I have not met that person. Even people who are retired who think that they're bored, they're always finding ways to be busy, right? And there are ways to be helpful. I'm not saying that you shouldn't help people, that you shouldn't be generous, that you shouldn't be giving. But what I am saying is when you're already overtaxed and you don't have enough time or space or energy to rest, to renew, to relax, to play, to enjoy your life, then something is out of balance. And when things are out of balance, usually it's because we've overcommitted, we've overdone it. So when you find yourself saying yes all the time, this is your practice to start saying no with kindness. So someone comes up to you and they give you a call and they say, hey, Susie, can you volunteer on the PTA committee? I can't find anyone else to do it. We really, really need someone. One thing you can do right away is pause before you answer. And a lot of times just the pause, that person's going to fill it in by thinking, oh, I know, you're probably too busy, right? That could happen. If it doesn't, it reminds you to pause before you answer. And one thing you can always say is, I'd love to help you out, but I need to think about it. Give yourself a little space to think about it. Now, I'm a processing kind of person, so a lot of times I don't even know if I should say yes or no when someone asks me. I have to go away. I have to think about it. I have to make sure it feels right. I have to look at my calendar. I have to, just really give myself space. But 9 times out of 10, I come back with, I'm sorry, I'd love to help you, but I can't right now because my plates are very full. I have a lot to take care of. And that's what I want for you is to give yourself the pause, give yourself the space to think about it first before you jump right in and say yes. Another way that you can answer is to say, I really appreciate you asking, to start leading the no with a positive. So I really appreciate that you thought of me and that you asked me. I just think that's so great. Unfortunately, I really can't help you out right now. You don't even have to, you hear that. I didn't even say no. And sometimes just the word no has this physical sensation that's hard for us to handle. And that's a lot of times what keeps us from saying it. But if you could say, I really thank you for asking me. I'd love to help you out, but I just can't right now. It's way easier and it feels better. It's a little bit of a softer no. And it's a great way to start practicing setting up those boundaries. One thing that I find even harder than saying no is once you've said yes to something and then you want to uncommit. It's like you messed up, right? Or right now, maybe this is the first time you're like, you know what? I've been wanting to say no to this person. I've been feeling afraid. I thought I was being selfish. I didn't realize I wasn't setting boundaries. I'm going to go and I'm going to uncommit to this thing. I'm going to tell them I just can't do it. Sometimes that's harder because you've already given them your yes and you're reneging it, right? But I'm telling you, it's worth it. If you are feeling resentful, if you're feeling irritated, if you're feeling suffocated by a commitment, then really take a good look at it and say, is this something that you need to do right now? Who is this serving? Who is this helping? And if it's taking away from your joy, from your happiness, from your health and well-being, then you know the boundaries have been blurred and it's time to set some new ones. And the other thing to remember is when you're starting to set these new boundaries, you do have to retrain the people in your life. If they're used to you always saying yes and all of a sudden you're coming back with a no or you're uncommitting to something, that might shock them a little bit. But you know what? They are going to start respecting you because with no boundaries, there's little respect. When you start setting the boundaries, people will start respecting you. And it's almost like it has a ripple effect. It's like, whoa, you mean you say no to stuff? You can say no to things? Man, I think I can try that. And actually that has happened to me. I have a friend who reminds me all the time. I didn't realize it, but she asked me to do some things and I said, I really can't do that right now. And later on, years later, she came back to me and said, I always think of you when I say no to something because I never would say no. And then when you said it, I was like, wow, I didn't even know that was an option. So remember that because you'll start helping other people set boundaries. You'll start helping them find more liberation and freedom in their life. Going back to, though, uncommitting to something. So just recently this happened to me. I made a commitment with a partner. We were going to do an online course together, and it's something we've done once before. It was pretty well put together, and but it still took a lot of marketing and getting it organized. And I found myself I was doing all the admin for it, and all of a sudden another project came up. About a retreat in the fall. And then all of a sudden I was just feeling, whoa. And I'm really good now at I know my limit, especially with my work. And I don't have a lot of extra time once school starts, and we just have so much stuff going on this fall. I thought, I cannot run an e-course and then do all the stuff I'm doing for my own circle and a retreat. It became too overwhelming. And so even after we opened registration for it, talking with my partner, we decided that we both were in agreement that this wasn't the right time to offer the course. And so we closed registration. We talked to the people that had signed up. And that was hard because I felt like I was disappointing people. I mean, that's the main thing. It's wow, we put this thing out there. They were excited. And now we're not being true to our word, right? We're disappointing people. But they probably would have felt even more disappointed not having teachers who were really fully in it. And I would have felt resentful that I even had to run the e-course over my last couple of weeks of summer. The timing was not right. And so for the most part, when I shared with the people who had registered, they were understanding. And we gave them a deal on something else, and it all worked out. And I could breathe again. So I was still being giving, I was still being kind, I still was being generous, but not at the expense of my own health and happiness. And so that's what I want to inspire you today, is to really look at where your time is being sucked, where your energy is being used, where you're feeling taken advantage of or resentful or overcommitted, and how you can start setting some healthy boundaries in your life. Start today. If you have questions about this topic, you can email me, Shannon@afreespiritlife.com. You can join us on our Facebook free group, A Free Spirit Life Community, and share in the conversation. Here's one of our members' posts. I think this is helpful. She says, boundaries. This topic is a big deal for me. I find it hard to hurt people's feelings or to feel like I'm letting people down, but setting boundaries often results in exactly that, because in setting the boundary, I'm insisting on being treated like a human being with human needs. And if someone's assumption about me is that they're allowed to treat me as less than a human being, and they've based their interactions with me on that assumption, then setting a clear boundary is going to offend them or even make them angry, and there isn't any way around that. I know this, but I still struggle massively with dealing with it. As people pleasers, we're so conditioned to take responsibility for everyone else's emotions. I've never found an easy way of dealing with these uncomfortable feelings of shame and guilt that arise when someone else is comforted by my boundary setting, even though I know this response is mostly conditioning. I just sit with the uncomfortable feelings and try to breathe through them, a bit like labor pains, she laughs. I am always astonished at how hard it is to set even the smallest boundary sometimes. I can feel like trying to push back the tide, but we all have to do it. Oh my God, that is so insightful, isn't it? And she's so right that when we say no to something, when we set a boundary, we can feel a physical sensation take over our body, almost to the point where you feel sick. And I love her suggestion to breathe through it, because you know what? How human of us. That is a human thing. We are caring, we are kind, we are loving, we want to help, and we do. We do that, but a lot of us, what I see when we're living out of balance, we do it at the expense of our own health, happiness, and well-being. You matter. You are enough. You are whole and complete just as you are, and you do not have to take on other people's problems to feel whole, to feel of value. to be worth something. If you could take good care of you, then you will be more available to give and be generous to others, especially on your terms. So remember that as you move forward today, that yes, it's a natural human sensation to feel this like pushing against a tide when we're setting a new boundary. But remember, the people in your life will respect you for it. They will have a clearer understanding of what they can and can't ask you to do, and you will feel better. You will breathe more freely. You will have more space, time, and energy to nurture your gifts, to bring your dreams to reality, to do the things that you're here to do. And that is how you can give. That is how you can share. Before I end this conversation, the last little piece is for those of you who have a hard time not being a people pleaser and you take on people's stuff and you're wondering, how do I hand it back? One thing that I do is I visualize that, like my kids, when they are having a tantrum or they are acting like they can't do something for themselves, or my partner is having a bad day, or whatever it is, people are turning to me for help and I just don't have the energy to give it. I try to imagine them dancing. They're swirling, they're twirling. So if my kid's having a tantrum, that's his dance. If my partner's having a crappy day, that's his dance. Not to say I'm not going to be compassionate and loving and supportive, but I'm not going to take the problem on. I'm not going to carry it as my own. Because remember, their problems are their problems. Their problems are not your problems. So in order for you to feel like you can breathe a little more and deal with your own problems is to hand those problems back. Imagine those people dancing and say to yourself silently, let them dance. Let them twirl. Let them be. Let them dance. Don't let them get you caught up in the dance. Another way I used to envision it is they were the tornado. And I'm feeling pretty at peace and I'm, going about my life, and they come in and it's so easy for them to pull me into their swirl. And then I'm wrapped up in that tornado with them. And one way to set a boundary is simply to let them twirl. Let the tornado go by you. You find your peace. You find what brings you groundedness. With an open heart, not turning your back to them, still in a very loving way, but not so that you're now holding the burden. Does that make sense? I hope it does. I hope that you find inspiration in this topic. It's a big one. I can't do it full justice in a 20-minute show, but at least it's a good start. So like I said, join our Facebook group, email me if you have any questions, and be on the lookout in your emails soon for some more details about new changes with some e-courses and my Live Freely Circle. Be well, my friends. Take good care, and I will see you next week.
To be free, to feel free, to